My name is Joe Diorsi, and I am with Pastor Adam Bauer.
Hey,
and we are in Studio 215. We are talking about something that's close to your heart.
Yep.
It's actually a strategy that you've been working on a lot lately, and it's set to be released in January. It's called KAIO Small Groups.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit today. We're going to aim for about 10, 12 minutes. This is kind of a revamped version of KAIO. KAIO has been here before. It's been praised before.
Yeah.
But there's been some tweaks. There's been some adjustments. And I just want to say from an overview, KAIO to me is critical because one of the major factors with KAIO is, and you point this out in the training manual, is that we say a lot of things with our lips as Christians, and we believe a lot of things with our minds.
Yeah.
But our actions in our lives sometimes don't follow suit.
Yeah.
And we can be selective hearers, selective readers.
Yep.
In the Bible, and we tend to steer clear of some of the more convicting things that Jesus says.
Yeah.
And KAIO kind of wraps that up and holds you accountable, and you have to live out those verses, or you're letting everyone else down in your group.
Yeah. And I think, like, just going back to what we talked about this Sunday with the parable of the talents, you have these people who are given the gospel, so they have the stuff they have to do.
Yeah.
And you have to manage, like, everybody has a life and everybody has things they have to do. Like you have a job and you have these different relationships that you're accountable to, and the Bible says you have to, be good at these things. And then on top of that, there's the gospel. And it's like, so what? I have to manage my life so well that I can actually do something with the gospel. Because if given the right choice, if somebody were to come up to you and say, hey, like, here's, you have 2 coats on you, and there's somebody who doesn't have a coat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Most people are going to say, like, here's my coat. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's no question it's going to be like, no, I need 2.
Right.
And so it's like, but people never get around to those scenarios because they're so busy. So they're never intentional to do the work of the gospel that's supposed to take place in their lives.
Yeah.
And so this is a way of making sure that we are walking out the gospel. And in our hearts, everybody wants to walk out the gospel and do a good job with it. It's just that you have to be organized to a degree and set your priorities to a degree to make sure, and have systems set up and accountability set up to make sure that you're doing it well. And everybody says, like, well, I just want it to come naturally. And I don't care how long you pray, you still have free will.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Your free will never be taken from you. Adam walked in the garden with God and still had his free will. So I think sometimes people think, well, I'm just going to continue to just pray and then this stuff's going to come naturally. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
If that was the case, Adam wouldn't have sinned because he was with God. So we have our free will. We need to be diligent in prayer and with good deeds.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned busyness. That's one of the pitfalls of our culture as we kind of round into 2020. That's why you've been preaching on it.
Yeah.
What are some other things as you take a step back and look at the tendency of people, specifically Christians, here as we head into 2020, that KAIO pretty immediately and directly addresses?
Yeah. I would say that if I was going to talk, what the enemy has been doing and is doing is isolation. So he's trying to get people isolated. If you get isolated from believers, what ends up happening is that you begin to have an audience with the enemy in a very extreme way. So an example of that is Jesus in the wilderness. He's by himself, and anytime that you're by yourself, the voice of the enemy is going to come alongside of you to try to get to twist your thinking, to try to get you to act. And so for me, what I end up thinking is when people get isolated, and that's what the small group's going to crush, is that isolation, is they start to have the enemy's thoughts and what the enemy's thinking, and then they begin to lose focus on what matters most, and then they begin to make poor decisions. Once they start to make poor decisions, like they're not the best spouse they can be, the best parent they can be, the best employee they can be. You were created to be the best at what it is that you do, and do all things as if you were doing them for the Lord. But once you stop having priority and doing things well, you start to lose your joy and peace, and then that's when people start to make really poor decisions. And that's when sin enters the game.
Yeah.
So then people are trying to find peace and joy in doing the wrong thing, like drugs or in another person or just something. It's like, I know that I'm meant to feel good. I'm not doing a good job. I'll do this so that I can feel good.
Yeah.
And that's where people end up when they're isolated, and it's not very good. So like we need each other's perspectives. We need each other's accountability. We need to be spurred on towards loving good deeds.
So it's an opportunity for genuine community as well.
Yeah, because this is, in our culture today, people are like, well, I just have Jesus. And it's like, no, if that was the case, we would not need the bride and they would have never gathered. So you're just not getting alone with Jesus.
Yeah. That's
important, but you have to get with the body.
Yeah. And the verse that kind of sparked or spurred on, if you will, this whole system was from Hebrews, right?
Yeah. Yep, Hebrews 10:24. So initially what KAIO was it stands for the acronym Knowledge, Awareness, Intentionality, Obedience. We know what to do, we want to be obedient, but we're not always aware or intentional to connect A and B. And so what KAIO was going to do was it was going to bring a group. And what I find with like people is, especially with men, this is why I love this group for men. Men do not like disappointing other men. Like they don't like looking, they don't like poor performance in front of other guys. So what I liked about the first KAIO system is that like men really stepped up to the plate and really did what it is they said they were going to do. And so that's what KAIO was designed to do. What it was, I'm going to read, I'm going to pray, you're going to hold me accountable to that, and then also I'm going to ask God and try to be obedient in the midst of that to what it is that he's asking me to do. And I'm going to encourage everybody in the group. And that was how the first KAIO groups went.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the most interesting things about this system is what you have with inner versus outer healing. In a nutshell, can you kind of describe, now make no mistake, there will likely be spiritual breakthrough in your group.
Yeah.
Chains will be broken, things might come off of you. But can you talk about inner healing versus outer healing, and just the fact of maybe standing firm sometimes, or being diligent with what you have?
Yeah. Now, like for me, if psychology is probably 150 years old, somewhere around there, and if that was the way, you know what I mean, I believe that Jesus would have came as a psychologist, right?
Yeah.
He didn't, and I'm not bashing on psychology or counseling or any of that stuff. But we, as a society, have been just saturated in it. So we think every issue we have is something from our past and something in us that's wrong with us.
Yeah.
But when you look at what he told Cain and Abel, he said, if you do a better job, you'll feel better about yourself. And I was like, oh my goodness, what a simple way of putting it. So for me, what outer healing is, it's almost like, hey, make sure your relationships are good, so that you and God can fellowship. Because he says, if you have broken relationship, don't bring your offering to me. And that's an outward brokenness that has to be fixed, so that the inward can be okay. Also, like where you put your money, that's where your heart will go. It's what you do on the outward that determines what happens on the inside. So that's what outward healing is, as opposed to fixing something on the inside so the outside can be better.
And these aren't like hyper spiritual things. These are decisions.
Yeah, just very simple. I'm going to make this a priority.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about KAIO, is that it doesn't complicate things. I mean, to me, as a black and white guy, like that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hyper spiritualize things that need not be.
Yeah. Now, let me just say this. Some people think the wrong things and they need their thinking corrected to fix the outside. So that stuff's very much in play, but that's not the answer for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've kind of shared the concept. Could you briefly just kind of go into the system, the model? This is a workbook.
Yeah.
What does a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly meeting look like?
Well, I'll talk about the first meeting. We show up, there's an interview. There's probably like a 4-page interview in which you partner up with your partner and you simply interview them. And they reflect on these questions that you're asking them. And it's basically this. It's like, where are you not performing your best? And where is your conscience on that? And where is it as a person do you want to be? In these things, because people are often saying like, well, I'm just too busy. We can't be too busy to focus on your life.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be busy, let's make sure that we're putting priorities first. Let's make sure that we're doing the right thing. Let's make sure that your life is looking what you want it to look like on Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Don't let the world dictate what your life looks like. I think that's what a lot of people are doing. So the interview gets people focused on their life and what do they want to do better. And then what's different this year is that instead of doing prophetic words each week, what we end up doing is you have a KAIO task list. And the KAIO list is things that you are doing to make sure that you're putting what you want to put first in your life.
Yeah.
And certainly prayer and reading scripture is there. And then after that, it's like, well, I want to be a better what? and you've decided that, and you have a list of things that you need to do on a weekly basis or on a daily basis that gets you to that place of excellence that you want to be.
Yeah. So as we record, it's December 11th. And our goal for this, I believe, to have these manuals printed, to have, a web page up, or a page off of our Praise York website, and registration sign up.
Yep.
What are we looking at? Is this first week, second week, January? How can people sign up?
In January, starting in January, that whole month we're going to dedicate to KAIO, and signups are going to be there every Sunday. I'm looking for leaders currently. I'm looking for people who are devoted to praise, who are givers of their time and their resources, that are dedicated to us, that are saying, well, I would like to be a leader.
Okay.
And from that, we're going to have different groups. The groups are going to be, they can be an all-female group, they can be an all-guy group, they can be a couples group. But for me this year, they can be once a week, they can be every other week. What's important to me this year is that we make the time to get in the groups. And I don't care what the group looks like necessarily. I don't want to be rigid around it. But I'm looking for 4 to 10 people that are gathering together who are determined to make sure that God is determining their life instead of the world.
Yeah.
And so it's not this is something else that I need to do. This is the center of what it is I'm doing and what my focus is in my life.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's going to look like in January. We're going to start to have signups and have the leadership in place.
Okay, very good. Now, if you're someone who you believe fits that criteria, are they to email us, talk to us?
Yeah, just email us at info@praiseyork.com, and we'll make sure that you get connected with me, and I'll see what you're thinking as far as when and where and how often.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Adam. That was KAIO in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Stay tuned.
Thank you.